Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is part 5 of Let's Get Cooking, our cooking series, and today we're going to be actually picking up objects. For this series I've chosen to use a physics-based pickup system so that items have a little bit more of a natural feel when you're moving around with them. They move a little bit in angles, and we can set that to however we feel we want it in our game, and I'll show you how to do that as we go along. Last time we got as far as our message system. Give it a second because when I'm recording it takes my graphics card a little while to catch up. So if we hold it over, we've got use E to pick up a slice of bread and or whatever the item might be. But we can't do anything. We can press E and nothing happens because we haven't implemented it in any way, shape or form. And that's what we're going to do today. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is to open up your BP base. Okay. And we're going to be doing a lot of the work in the BP base and the player. Now, because with the BP base is our main parent actor for all of our sub-parent actors and then child actors from there, child parent actors and child actors of those parents. So remember, we made one called ingredients, and our bread is a child of the ingredients. Whatever we do here can be used in any of our future blueprints. And also, most importantly, and I'll show you that later, can be overridden, added to, or not even used at all in our blueprints. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to right click, make a custom event, and we're just going to call this pick up item. Okay. And the reason I'm doing it this way is so that if you don't want to use it, it's not stuck and you don't have to override the do something function unless you really need to. Okay, so the first thing we do is we're going to drag in our has been dropped, and we're going to make sure that's set to false. It is no longer dropped. We're going to right click, we're going to get our player character, and from there we're going to call set item in hand. So we've got the message, and it should come from player interface. Double check that target is BPI player. The actor reference, well, that's this actor, or that we are actually interacting with itself. And then we're going to call grab item. Again, make sure the target is BPI player. And we're going to do that. So that is all we're going to use our pickup for. Okay. And in our game base, I'm not sure whether I've got it. Let's have a quick look. Okay, you may not have this. So let's open up our BPI thing, and we're going to make a new function. Okay. We're going to say call this set mesh physics, and that's going to have an input of a boolean and say simulate physics. Now, if any of you are familiar with Unreal, you know there's something called set simulate physics. You might be asking, why am I not just using that? Because to use that, I need to be able to get access to a specific mesh. By doing it through an interface, I don't need to know what that mesh is. I just need to say, on this actor, use a mesh, and then that is dealt with inside the actor. We're going to go back to our BP base. I'm going to delete that because I've already done it. And you see I've put it in the wrong place. So let's go back to our game base. Oh, we're going to select it and we're going to choose base so that it keeps them all together as we started last time. So double click our set mesh physics. We're going to drag in our basic mesh because that's the mesh that everything may or may not have. Okay. And again, you can override this. So if you're not using the base mesh and you've got another mesh you want to do the physics on, then you can. I'm just going to say simulate, set simulate physics, and we're going to just join them up here. Basically, we're calling that to say on whatever mesh we've connected here, we're going to simulate physics. And like I say, you can override this at any time, depending on your actor. Okay, and we're going to make one more. If we go to our interact, we've got one here called drop item from BPI interact. Okay, so we're going to get that. We're going to get our has been dropped. We're going to say yes, it has been dropped. So we're going to set that to true. We're going to get our item mesh. And we're going to say we don't need to use our interface call because we're already in. So we're going to turn on our physics just to make sure we've got some initial physics working on the item. When we drop it, we want it to fall, so we need to make sure the physics is there. It should be there because it's being run, but it doesn't hurt to double check. Sometimes they don't always work. Then we're going to go to our get player character. Now be careful here with this because I really didn't name the interface call very well. You drag off here and you want to type in drop event is what we called it. Make sure it's from player. Target is BPI player. Okay, the reason I said this is because I just had to redo the video because I the naming of this. What I think we can do, let's make it a little bit easier. Let's go into our player interface by double clicking that. We're going to say drop event, we're going to rename it. And we're going to say player drop event, just to differentiate it a little easier. So saving that, and if we go back to our BPI base, player drop event, we've got that. Compile that and save. Okay, so that's all we need to do in our base class. So we've got our pickup item here. We've got our event set mesh physics here, and our drop item here. Okay. And I'd like you now to open up your BPP ingredients. And in here we are going to actually activate that call. So we're going to our interfaces, interact, and we're going to double click and do something. Okay. And basically we're just going to call pick up item. Okay. Make sure that's from BPP base. And that should handle all of our pickup for us. And that's all we need to do in there. Now we're going to open up our character, a BPP chef. And we're going to make a new variable. Now I've already made this, but I'm going to delete it and make it again just to show you. Okay. In fact, we've got 2 new variables, I believe. If we haven't got is pouring, please go ahead and make is pouring with a boolean. If not, then if we already got it, then don't bother. So we're going to say item in hand, and we're going to, this is going to be bpp underscore base item. Compile that. First thing we're going to do now is we want to set this. So we're going to look at our interfaces, our player interfaces, set item in hand. We're going to double click that, and we're simply going to set that. Set is pouring. Again, we double click that and simply set that. Okay, nice and simple. Okay. So let's do the easier out of the two first, although neither of them are that difficult. Let's going to do player drop event. So we'll double click that, and all we need to do on that is quite simple. We're going to bring in our item in hand, right click, convert it to validated get. If it's not valid, and i.e. we don't have anything, then there's no point running all this code. Okay, it's a way of also stopping any errors, because if we try and run the code and you haven't got it, you're going to get errors. But also it's a little bit more efficient. So first thing we're going to do is drag off of here and go set is pouring, because if we are pouring, so it's coming from the base, we want the message to not pouring. Okay, so if there's any, so we're in the middle of pouring and you drop it, we don't want it to continue pouring, we want it to stop that code. Now, in order for us to be able to pick up and drop stuff, we need to add some extra components to our player. So the first one we're going to do, let's go to our viewport. We're going to add some places that we know where they are. Okay. So we're going to click on our first person camera, and we're going to add a scene component. Okay. And we're going to call this grab offset. Now this does 2 jobs. It positions where we want the item to be held in front of us, and also we can use this to help eliminate any pitch in the camera, in other words, for the back up and down tilt. Now if you look here at this one, our camera is set to 0 or -89, -89, but it's 0 in the pitch, yeah, in the green here. Okay, so it's pretty well straight ahead, so it doesn't matter. But some characters, if you've got your own character, they may have a heads down slight look, and you'll find that everything is not nice and flat, so we would use this to compensate for that. If people request, I can show you how to set that if you need it for your player, because the reason I put that there is in my original setup game, I import the character and he's got a bit of a hunched over look to him, and his camera points down quite considerably, so in order for it to look straight, we put the offset. But what we do want in the offset is we want to position it. Now I found for this character 15 up, and in the X 75 in front. So it's in front and up. Okay. Now from that grab offset, we are going to add another scene component. Seems a bit overkill, but grab anchor. Now, the reason this is, we can set this grab anchor to be different to the grab offset. So in other words, we could actually set it to 0, 0. Now this is actually compensated for that, but we're going to just click there, make sure it's 0, 0. We want it to be 0 off of this, so it should be counted off this, not the camera. And then we're going to highlight that. We're going to add one more, and it's going to be a static mesh, and we're going to call this grab mesh. The reason we use that because physics needs a mesh to act upon. Okay, then make sure that's 0, 0 all across the board. Now this one we are actually going to set a mesh. We're going to look for sphere. I'm just going to use a standard sphere. You see it's huge, right? We've got to play it. We're going to go see this front of person. What the heck? You know, this is no good to us. So we're going to deal with that right now. First thing we do is we're going to make it 0.01. Make it tiny. Okay. Now if we play, you still see it, which we don't want, but you can see it's there as a tiny mesh. Okay. So we're going to, with our mesh highlighted, we're going to go scroll down to our collision. You see it's set to block all dynamic. Okay. We don't want that. We're going to set it to, one thing. We're going to set it to custom. And we're going to ignore all. The only thing I've told it to do is a tracer. Here, where you've got collision enabled query in physics, we want to change that to physics only, no query collision. I just want it to be able to have physics acting on it. And finally, to get rid of it, we can look for, which I can never ever find, here, under rendering, hidden in game. We don't want to see it, okay? So now if we play, it's not there anymore. And one more component we need to add to the player, so let's make sure we connect, click on the top, and we're going to call it a physics handle. I'm just going to leave it as physics handle, that's fine. Okay, so we're done with the setup of the player. Now with the physics handle, we can't move it anywhere, we don't see it, but it has lots of settings here that we'll deal with later on. Okay, so let's go back to our event graph. Now that we've got our physics handle, we can drag that in and we can say release component. Release component. Okay. It literally does what it says on the tin. Let's go with the component. Okay. Then we're going to drag in our item in hand and we're going to set that to a null value or nothing, empty. Now go to our player here. We need to add another thing into our player interface. We're going to double click that. If you have already done it and I've accidentally deleted it, then it doesn't matter. You can say call this give physics handle. I think we may already have set that up last time. But if we've got it, then you don't need to repeat this. And this has an output of type physics handle. No external physics. Physics handle component. And we're just going to call it physics handle. And we're going to double click on the give physics handle and we'll connect that to that because we need that later on down the road. So for your event drop item, that is all it is, okay? Quite simple. Now we're going to do the slightly longer one, the event grab item. And that does exactly what it says on the tin. It grabs the item. So as before, we're going to get our item in hand, convert it to validated get. If we have a valid item, we're going to go ahead. Now remember, we've set this in our BPI, in our BP game base, in our pickup function here, set item in hand, okay. So that should always be valid, but it's always good to check anyway. Now because we're going to be moving stuff around a little bit, we don't want physics acting or else to get some weird effects. So first thing to do is we can drag off of here, we say set mesh physics message, and we're going to turn our physics off straight away. Okay. Then we're going to drag our physics handle in. Now we need to move our physics handle to where we want it. We want our physics handle to be where this grab mesh is. Okay. So we're going to say set target, location and rotation. Like so. Get our grab mesh. Get world location. You're interested in where it is in the world, not relative to other parts of the player. And here we're going to drag down and we're going to say make rotator. We're going to drag in our camera, and I'll explain why we're doing this in a moment. Get world rotation. We're going to right click on the purple pin, split the pin. We're going to connect the Z or yaw here. The reason we're doing this is we want to keep the Z in the same place, okay? The same pitch, so it doesn't move it elsewhere. It keeps it nice and central in your screen. Okay, so once we've done that, we grab our item in hand and we say give data. Now this is from our base. Again, we want the message. Go to there. Okay. From our grab point, we want to promote this to a variable, and we're just going to name it temp grab point. Okay. And this is really just there to help us stop strings later on. Drag in our physics handle again. Now here we're going to say grab, and you'll see it comes up with grab component at location and rotation. This is the one we want. The component is going to be this component. Okay. We're going to get our temp grab point again. I've got 2 because okay, it's from earlier one. Okay, so we're going to grab our temp grab point. We're going to get world location. And there's going to be our location. And then we're going to say get world rotation. And we're going to add that. So basically we're saying we're going to get the world location and rotation of this grab point in our give data from our item that we're trying to pick up, and that's where we're going to grab it by. That's its point of pickup. Then we're going to one more time drag in our item in hand, and we're going to use our set mesh physics message, and we're going to turn our physics on. Okay, very important. Now, before I forget, we are going to go back to our BPP ingredients. We are going to look for our base and our give data. We're going to make sure, if it hasn't already done it, make sure you put your base mesh and your grab point on the same one, because it won't work, because we're looking for the grab point. Okay. So if the mesh is not on the grab point, this will not work, it won't pick up. Okay. You'll find out why we've got these later on, because sometimes these will be different. So for example, got a knife, you don't want to be picking it up and your mesh's center for the knife is in the middle of the knife. You don't want to be picking it up in the middle of the knife or halfway down the blade. You want to be picking it up on the handle. So later on, in things like utensils, we will be adding a separate grab point mesh, a tiny mesh, to say this is where we want to pick it up, and that will be what we put here. Things like ingredients, it's fine to pick them up at the mesh's root. Again, once you see how the system works, if you want to, for a specific ingredient that you've made, maybe it's a funny shaped object, you want to pick it up in a certain place, like a carton of milk or something, you know, then maybe you could do that, but I would probably put that carton of milk in under a different heading. So make sure that that's the important part. Okay, so let's go back to our BPP step. Now the first thing we want to do is, okay, we've got our grab item, we've got our drop item, but we've got no way of actually interacting with it. So back before we made our interact key, so we go IA underscore interact, and you'll find our AI. Make sure you choose the event, not the values. Okay, so here it is. I've opened it up because I want to use started, not triggered. Okay. Okay, so the first thing we do, we get our item in hand, for it to validated get. Okay. Now, if we have an item in our hand, we're using our E key or our interact key to pick up or drop an item. We want to drop it. Yeah, we've got an item that will be valid. We want to drop it. So we simply drag off of here and call drop item, which is what we set up in our BPI base earlier. Make sure the target is BPI interact. Now, if we don't have an item, we're going to drag in our hit actor, which you should have from your tracer from the last tutorial. Create to validated get, and we're going to say, is it valid? Now, obviously, we only want a valid to try and pick up something if it's valid. If not, you'll get a screen full of messages. Now, we're going to drag off of here, and we're just going to type in do something. Now, remember, beginning of this tutorial, in our BPI ingredients, now event graph, I do something, we ran the pickup item. Okay. So we're running the item. We have our item, so let's compile and make sure we've got our pickup. Well, that should work, shouldn't it? We've told it to pick up an item. Let's try and find out. Here's our bread here. Let's play. I'm going to give it a second for it to settle for me because of recording. Right, okay. Come across here. Oh, look, use E to pick up slice of bread. I'm pressing E, but nothing's happening. You might think, oh, well, there's something wrong. Well, actually, in effect, it is happening. But what is happening is, although we're picking up the item, it's not following us, and then we need it to follow us. And how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to make ourselves a function. Just to make it neater, we could just put it in event graph for a function. We're going to say keep item with layer. Nice and simple. Okay. Now we set this is pouring because we only want to do this if we're not pouring. We're going to say get is pouring into a branch. We're going to be working off the false, okay? So we're going to get our physics handle and we're going to say set target, location and rotation, just like we did when we grabbed the item. Whoops, you made a mistake. Makes it off the false, not the true. Else this won't work. And basically we're going to do exactly the same as we did here in the event graph. In fact, we can copy it easier. At the very beginning here where we've got set location and rotation, you can copy these. Paste those, okay? Location, rotation, okay? Now because we are constantly moving as a player, this has to be run on every frame. But it's very lightweight, okay? All it's doing is moving the physics handle. Everything should follow the physics handle. So in our event graph, we'll find our event tick, which you should have your tracer on. Keep item with player, we run it there. So let's see what happens. Okay. I'm going to give it a second for it to sort itself out for me. So here we go. We still got our message. Press E to pick up the item. We'll see who picks it up. Okay. And it follows us. Follows we're being a bit jerky. But when I'm recording with 2 copies of 5.7 open, my computer struggles a little bit. And we can also find that it moves with us. You also see there's a bit of a lag and a bit of a jolt. Yeah, it keeps it sort of natural. Okay. Now we can make this more natural or less natural depending on the item you want. Some items you might want to make it more natural. So let's see, does it drop? Let's see again. There she goes down the floor and up. So we can look up, down, and you can see by having it following the camera, it's staying nice and flat. But at all times, you could actually, well, it's a little bit high. If it wasn't so high, you could actually place it quite gently on the floor. Okay. If we had a table, we could. In fact, just for giggles, let me just move that up. How deep that is. Like that. If I put my bread. There it is. Okay, so I could pick up the bread. I could go off of here. Like I say, we could be close enough to it. Pick up the bread. It's still, table's still not high enough, but you get the idea. Okay, so we've got our physics. Now, how do we change how natural that feels? So let's go to our BPP ingredients. Go to our static mesh. Let's check on our game-based mesh. So I haven't changed it. It does seem no. Okay. The BPP ingredients, our static mesh. If you look down, you have something called linear damping and angular damping and a mass. Now these all affect it, okay? Now if you want to, at the moment, if you want to stop some of that forward, I recommend putting the damping angle of about 5. Turn off the mass for now. Play it. And you play around with these figures to get it to how you feel is right for you in your game. You can even find new bread. There it is. Okay, And you can see this is a little bit more steadier. I can jiggle it around, yeah. And we've lost that severe jerk when we're moving. And also you notice it falls a little bit slower. Okay. Now, if I turn on the mass, 100 kilos, heavy slice of bread, but hey, bread's heavy, man. Okay, so let's put it again. Here it is. Now you see, doesn't appear to make much difference here, but it's possibly fall a lot quicker. Yeah. So all of these effects, and you just play around with these to make it, I'm going to turn up, to make it how you like it. Okay, so we now have successfully picked up and dropped an item, and we can make whatever items we want, and we will be making more items as time goes on. So the next episode we will be making our first appliance, and I will show you where I get the meshes from, which I've tried to use stuff that is readily available to everybody, free for everybody. If I've made them, I will share them with you. And also I will explain any special ways you may need to import them, like the mesh we're going to import next episode. If we just import it straight from Fab, it's not the way we want it, and I'll explain why in the next episode and how to import it differently. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. Make sure you compile and save your project. If you like my work, or you have any questions, hit the like button, send a comment, join my Discord for chat. The link's all below. If you really like my work, consider joining my Patreon or buying me a coffee. It all goes to help. I need to improve my computer for making more videos, get a better graphics card, so on and so forth. And it all helps keep things ticking along. Thank you. Bye.